Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. As-salatu was-salam ala Rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Halim wa salim bikum. My dear brothers and sisters, it's kind of like a short notice, but I wanted to talk about the developments today uh, and what happened in Syria, which has an indirect effect upon the African governments, but the Sahel in particular. And I wanted to talk about that because we as Africans, we should have well-rounded education, not only about what's on the continent or necessarily in Europe, but also what's in Jazeera Arab as well. And the groups that are fighting there because they have made their entry into North Africa and into the Sahel region as well. But it's important that we look at this development and how we can tie this in to our situations here in the Sahel in North Africa in particular. Well, let me give my solicitation. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi barakatuh. Lil ikwani rati fi din. Wassalamu ala mani tabahuda lil ikwani wati fi Afrika, Europa, America, wa Caribbean, wa kuli makan. My dear brothers and sisters, the development of the overthrow of Assad and his regime, the Shia-backed regime, is something that goes to remind us about how tenuous our situation is. This man was empowered and he was ruthless in killing of Sunnah in particular. And his band of maniacs, the Rafida, and so forth and so on, were killing at will. Then when the notorious ISIS and some other groups began to try to take them out, Russia and the Americans stepped in to back him up, even though the Americans under Obama at the time said they weren't backing him, but essentially they were backing him. But we know Russia came in and got some financial things out of this, and they backed the Syrian government under Assad to kill the Sunni and also to kill the fledgling groups like IS and others. But it was one group in particular who was there, and they married up with the AQ and the IS at one time. And then they broke off when they found that their message wasn't correct. See, and this group here, and let me show you the picture of this new Amir that is in light of now going to take over. And I guess they will have a short council to talk about how they're going to run the country. But he's already gave us his indication that he's going to use Sharia law with a little bit of modern technical things as well, which you should do in modern times, because you can't run the Sharia law according to the 7th century. You must adapt to many changes that has occurred in our lifetime, because you cannot go back to the 7th and 8th century and then say, hey, I'm going to run the Sharia according to the way it was in the time in Mecca and Medina. You cannot do it. So he's assured that he will run the country under the Sharia law. Well, some will say, okay, they're looking at this man and they trying to figure, okay, well, yeah, I see what you're talking about, but I'm living here in Nigeria. I'm living here in the Gambia, or I'm living here in Mali or Burkina Faso, and so forth, so on, Niger. This does affect you in some ways, and I'll get into that. What this group here that broke off is Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. I heard about them a couple of years ago when they broke off. They were small. They broke off from IS and the AQ at one time, and they began to develop. It seemed like nobody was touching them. I asked my question. Matter of fact, I said something to my wife a long time ago about this. I said, why is this group allowed to flourish? Remember, there was other fledgling groups who were allowed to flourish, and then they were defeated. This group was never actually defeated at all. It was not even taken on until it grew to the forces that it is today, to where they have enough manpower to take out Assad. Now, no one should be putting any, how could I say, tears for this man, Assad. Because what he did to his country and what he did to the Sunnah, al-Jamaat, okay, means all of us who follow the rightful guidance of the Prophet ﷺ, and also learned under or adopted to the four greatest imams, Maliki, Shafi'i, and so forth and so on. So he killed them, and he allowed a running band of maniacs like the Rafida, whose mission is to kill the Sunnah. You as a Muslim sitting in Nigeria or in Niger, or you sitting in Ghana, or you sitting in anywhere else, you say that doesn't matter. It does matter, because you should know what groups are against you. And when they come into the country, what your response should be. And this is what we're talking about here now. This is important, brothers and sisters, for you as Africans and Muslim living in the Sahel and everywhere else. Because you need to understand, when the Shia and their groups begin to come in, they begin to change the Sunnah. And there's a variety of fatwas against them as it is. I won't get into that now. And there's a lot of other aspects as far as Taifiyah and all this. This is not a Sharia class or or we're dealing with the Imaniya Islamiyah. We're not dealing with that today. We're just talking about the incidents what happened and how it's going to affect you, or how it will affect you there in the Sahel. So what we have, brothers and sisters, now is a situation where our brothers and sisters are sitting back looking here in Africa, seeing the developments. Because those who are fighting, especially for IS, now they were basically defeated out of Syria. That's why you've been hearing me talk about IS in the Sahel, which I said they don't belong here. Now you understand. I've been building you up to this. Now you understand what I'm saying, because they've basically been driven out. They're still in Iraq. They're causing havoc. They're there in Afghanistan. And if you notice what these groups do, they usually only kill Muslims. They only plot bombs to kill other Muslims. Now, yes, they had to fight with the Rafida, and they had no other choice, because Rafida was going to kill them. And then the Russians and the Americans and the British, the Australians, all of them entered the fray into that region, and the Levant, as they call it, Basham and Syria. They entered that situation. Yes, they did. So anyway, this development is important for your historical background and for your edification as Muslims, because you should know what your brother is doing elsewhere. See? So let's look at this. Syria has fallen to the Mujahideen group Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. The emir said he will usher in Sharia law with modern twist to it. He said this is what he's going to do. They asked him in an interview, I think CNN interviewed him, and he gave good answers to this situation, talking about Syria. Very good answers to that. And he wasn't scripted. She was asking questions. He answered the questions. He said that the Assad government is officially dead. The Mujahideen group actually came in to take over the city, and now because the rest of the country has fallen under the hands of the Mujahideen. This is a scary development, because the West, of course, declared them terrorist groups well before they begin to take over. But you know how funny this is. Now, here, they're in their homeland. Now, of course, they had Mujahideen soldiers, and I'll get into that, from other places. But the fact of the matter is, the Americans, the Russians, the Chinese, or whomever, is not their land. when you come to invade them and to take them out, these brothers here from there fought back. And since they fought them back, now they're classified as terrorists. As long as they laid their arms down and submitted and say, yes, sir, boss, or, semi wa'ata, meaning, yes, I will obey, they wouldn't do that because these are starch hardened Muslims. So they would not tolerate the West. So therefore, they call them terrorists. They were not involved in killing anybody in Europe. They weren't involved killing anybody in America. They weren't involved in killing anybody in Africa. They didn't lay bombs, pipe bombs, kidnapping, and doing all kind of crazy criminal activity around the world, like the AQ and the IS. Yet they were declared terrorists. Now you understand why I've been building up to this point again, to show you how crazy it is. The Americans, the Europeans, the Tuba, the Asian governments who are involved in this, the G7s and all this other stuff, they rotate and malign, and they call terrorism, and they keep changing it. It mutates here and there according to what they say. But here you attack them in their country. They trying to take out a dictator who was killing the Sunnah. And so they were trying to take them out. The Americans declared them terrorist groups. Yet they never laid a bomb on anybody. Now, did they kill American soldiers? Yes, they did. Because again, brothers and sisters, let's use common sense here. If someone comes to your house to take you out, what are you supposed to do? You supposed to sit here and let the man do it? No, it's a human right. You fight him back. But see, under the West has this weird, sick, genocidal, racist opinion to things like this. When they come to attack you, you're supposed to put your hands up and let them kill you. But the minute you fight back, see, then suddenly they come back and say, oh, you Yahya, and your group, your Mujahideen group, you guys are terrorists. Even though I never laid a bomb in Los Angeles, I never laid a bomb in Paris, I never laid a bomb in Tokyo, Japan, or any other place in the world. Yes, I fought you because you invaded my homeland. So how can this be terrorism? This is what I'm trying to say. Now, don't misunderstand me. We're talking about the bare essence here. I'm not backing anybody. I'm not backing the Assad, and I'm not backing the West. I'm just telling you the facts on what it is, get you to think about how it is in the situation dealing with Muslims, because they deal with us as Fulani people, and it's the same way. They have genocidal, racist notions, and they change things around. But this is a serious situation because now you have a full-fledged Mujahideen group will take over a nation. IS tried it, but IS was not, they said they were going to run the Sharia. Yes, they ran it, but they had other things, planting bombs and doing other. I won't get into them. You know how I feel. I told you again the other day how I feel about them. I'm not going to talk about them again. I don't about what they are. We know what they are. So I'm just giving you this backdrop to this, brothers and sisters. What does this development mean to the groups in the Sahel? The Sahel groups, you can look at this in this way. Again, we're talking about the on ground now. What's happening? We're not talking about 2 or 4 the Mujahideen groups like our brothers, the Messina group, and so forth. We're not talking about them or our Tuareg brothers, the Ansar Deen and the Aswad group. We're not talking about them or the Arabs. We're not talking about who we like and who we don't like and all that. Okay, we're not going. They're Muslims. They are brothers. That's it. But we are, there's things we don't like what's going on about what they're doing. But I'm just talking about the incidents, how it's affect them. They will be looking at this and they'll be trying to get a blueprint. How did the Mujahideen group take out the Assad government? The Mujahideen groups in the Sahel will look at that model there and copy it. Who backed this Mujahideen group in Syria? You have to ask that question. Who bankrolled it? The Mujahideen groups, probably here in the Sahel, are very smart as well. They're going to say who was the financiers to give them the weaponry to take out Assad in Syria. And they will probably have some, you know, people who deal with arms, give them the information and so forth and so on. This is why I'm saying how tenuous the situation and how incendiary it could get. Because now they have their Muslim brothers in Syria just took over. Okay, just took over now the country. So it gives them hopes to ride out the storm, so to speak, meaning they'll be patient and bide their time. That's what this group in Syria did. They bided their time. They got the resources, they got the weaponry, and they called the jihad, and people came to Syria to fight. And when they had all the weapons and they had all the manpower and so forth and the backing, they went to attack Assad. And because Assad was weak, why? Because of the trouble that's going on in Gaza, in Palestine. And so now they kind of remove their hands from Assad, who they were protecting at one time. When they removed his hands, it allowed the Mujahideen group, this group in particular, to come in to take over in Syria and drive Assad out. There's reports he went to Iran, yes, because Iran's a Shia nation, okay? It is. And let me make something else clear today too, brothers and sisters. Here we're talking about the events. I'm not here to talk about the Sharia law or Iman Nia Islamia, talking about the Shia, are they Muslims or not. We have scholars, that's been tackled 1,000 times over. I'm not going to deal with that aspect of that. I'm just talking about what he did and how he murdered, bombed and killed inside Syria. And he killed the Sunnah. He didn't kill his own population of the Shia, he killed the Sunnah. So let's get that understood, okay? Let's get that understood. Also, it indicates how tenuous the support of Western powers can be. Now, brothers and sisters, you heard me talk. This aspect has been going on for, since ancient Egypt. I'll get back into Egypt. What we call our ancestral brothers call Kemt. Okay, ancient Kemt, you call in English Egypt, but in Arabic it's called Messer. But in the Neher, the original Egyptian language, is called Kemt. Now, the West slips in, backs you play, and they slip out as fast as they come to support you. This is what has happened, why our African governments should be very cognizant of this. Look what happened to Assad. Assad had the Russians backing him. He had the other Shia to back his play. He had the Americans under the table backing his play. Okay, and they had other African regimes, African regimes in Jazeera Arab backing their play under the table. Suddenly, those hands were removed and Assad was basically naked. Now his fledgling army, who has killed and maimed and brutalized the people in Syria, now was left open. And Mujahideen took it to him and ran him out. And now he's over in Iran now. But this should wake up all African governments to say, look what the West has done. They backed this man, and suddenly they withdrew their agreements. That's why that paper that you signed, African leaders, today is worth nothing. Because why? When Americans or the British or the Germans or whomever are ready to move out, they don't care about this standing agreement. It says they're supposed to protect you. It's supposed to help to guard you. They're supposed to provide troops for you. They'll break that agreement anytime they want. And that's what they did with Assad in Syria. That's why African governments should be very cognizant and should learn to break away like Mali has done. Completely free, no loans, everything's paid off, and break away. Because that way you can build your own land, okay? You build your own military with your resources. Africa is loaded with resources and money. We have all this money. We have all these resources. Everybody in Africa should be sitting in and Mercedes Benz and Bentleys, and sitting there with 3 or 4, 5, 6 villas with servants and everything else that you want. We have the money for that. But of course, we know what has happened to it, but that's another story. Let's see, we've got some people here. How you doing, my dear brother? Thank you for showing up today. I appreciate it. Thank you very much for showing up today. And sister, how you doing? This is Turkey, Israel, U.S. back. They're going to Iran next. You know that, yes, you know, yes, my dear sister, that is a great possibility. Thank you for this reminder. Thank you very much, dear sister, for that. And you're welcome here. Salam alaikum rahmatullahi. Thank you very much, sister, for this information, because it's true. Because you know, it's a great possibility, because Iran has been backing these Rafida for a long time to kill Sunnah. See, so now it's time. Yes, they got the Americans talking, but you notice something. The Americans, Iran talk a lot. They hit each other, but they have one common enemy they both don't like. They don't like the Sunnah. They don't like people like me. Now, we ain't talking about race. We're talking about because we are the Sunnah al-Jamaat, meaning we take the religion from our Prophet ﷺ, and that's what we adhere to. The Shia don't do this. I won't get into all the ins and out of this, but the people who are like us, they kill us. So they have one common enemy, which is the Sunnah. Because why? The Sunnah is we have, the Shia is a small percentage, quote unquote, in Islam. We're basically the majority of Islam. So the Americans, government, and the Shia have this mithaq under the table to fight us. See, but this statement here, what our dear sister said, is very true. Now now Iran has a problem. Iran is looking at the events because their man has been taken out. And Iran is facing a lot of things with the Americans, and Iran is dealing with what the Israel is doing in Palestine. It's a big mess, brothers and sisters, big mess. And our sister said, we're the Muslims, and Sagai also, oh yes. The Shia began to come to Africa. Okay, I'm trying to remember here now. I think around about the 15th century, and they got spanked. And then they came back and they began to open up ports like in Tunisia and so forth and so on. And then and then in Egypt, of course, they ran Egypt for a while, and then they were driven out. But that's another story altogether, and whatnot. So thank you, my dear guests, for showing up today. You have any questions, please feel free to ask, and we will talk about that. Okay, yes. Isn't the Levant native Black African land? Yes. If you look at the history, I talked about that. You should follow me, my dear brothers and sisters. I talk about the ancient, what happened in ancient Kemt, which is ancient Egypt, but Kemt is in Meher is the original language of the Black people who were the founders of quote unquote Egypt. Egypt is actually a Greek word. Egyptalis, it's been so many years, but anyway, it's shortened down to Egypt. But yes, it was that, and I went into this about the Jews, how the Jews were originally Black. I gave all my indices and all the stuff to prove this is the case. I went through the linguistics as well, talking about what happened when Black folk was running so-called Jazira Arab before it became Jazira Arab, and so forth and so on. Because the original Arabs, as we understand it too, were Black folk as well. And I talked about that issue as well. So yes, yes, okay. Aren't the Muslims there extremely discriminating against Africans? Yes, that's another subject. Yes, they are. But we have other that are living there. Now, what's funny about this, brothers and sisters, is you have a Black man who's jet black in color from Sudan, but he's classified as Arab. You have a Black man, jet black in color, but he's from Senegal, or he's from the Gambia, or so forth, so on, or they're not classified as Arab. They will discriminate against the Black man over here because of where he's from. But if he's from Sudan, because there's many Sudani who look like me and darker, I mean, sometimes 3 times, 4 times darker than me, living in that region. And they're not discriminated against. But the brothers from the Gambia, from Senegal, are discriminated, even though both are the same color. But one's classified as Arab and the other one's classified as Black African. And that's how they look at it. That's unfortunate. Okay, that's okay. I answered that. All right. So let's get back to this here. You should put the fledglings. Yes, this. I know that our governments are looking at this, and they should look at their agreements and look what happened to Assad. Now, our African governments are nothing like Assad. Okay. Yes, they do things here and there may be corrupted, but Assad murdered, and he murdered, and he murdered. Okay, and he took out a lot, I mean, killed a lot. And he killed a lot of women and children who were Sunni, and they were Arab just like him. But because they were Sunni, quote unquote, Muslims, he killed them. Irrespective, Rafida killed children, even babies. They didn't make no difference. They killed them all. They didn't care. But our African governments should be looking at this. Their Western allies could abandon them and fight the Sahel, because when you got your fight with the Mujahideen and rogue miscreant groups and the bandits, Boko Haram, you got all these things running in the Sahel right now. If the West removed its hands and leave you to where you don't have all the resources and the money that you've been getting from the West, in particular the Americans, you're going to be just like Syria. You're going to be having Mujahideen groups motivated coming to take you out. That's why I said the fledgling governments should be watching this and saying, hey, look what the West did. They removed their hands from this leader. That's what I'm talking about here. Right or wrong, we're not here talking about that. We're talking about the situations on what could happen and what has happened with the West. Why I said in my last program that the West and their game of death called the war on terror is a failure. Look what has happened, quote unquote, a terrorist group, they said, took over after they have spent billions of money to fight all the Mujahideen groups. And you heard me talk about this in the past and even a couple of days ago. When the 9/11 came down, there was a handful of groups here and there. There were nothing, small groups, brothers and sisters. But over 20 years or more later, what has happened? It's grown 500% and it's still growing. We have insurgencies in 25 African states because of the heavy-handedness of the American war on terror. That is the truth. All the scientists will tell you that. They came in and said, we're going to do this. We'll give all these governments all this money. The governments put the money in their pocket. They didn't advance their armies or nothing. And Mujahideen, they went after the wrong people. Like me, they go to the masjid. I'm 70 years old. I can't go fight with any groups or nothing. I'm too old now. Okay, if I don't have my 8 hours or 9 hours of sleep or my nap during the day, brothers and sisters, I'm out of it. So I can't go be fighting anybody. I'm too old. But I'm just saying, people like myself who go to the masjid and so forth and so on, that's who they begin to fight and they begin to kill. Our younger brothers, Muslim brothers said, okay, you're going to fight me. I'm going to take to the desert. And they did. They began to form groups. Now we got so many Mujahideen groups. We got miscreant groups. We have quote unquote extremist groups. All of this is running rampant in Africa. Today, 25 of our states in Africa are incendiary situations where we have Mujahideen, we got miscreant groups fighting against the government. And the Americans just can't pay enough money to stop it. Nor can they go and put the fire out because Africa is too big. Because of their genocidal, racist war on terror, now we have it's blue. Now look at Jazeera Arab now. You see the war on terror, brothers and sisters, what happens when it's not rightfully by subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he doesn't say, you go fight. The Americans don't believe in nothing except their own power. They don't even believe in subhanahu wa ta'ala. They only believe in what they feel and their thing. That's why they run their government. That's why we have strict codes in Islam. When you Muslim decide that the government and the government indices in the West is greater than the Sharia law, why we call you kafir. And we say you have apostated out because of that fact. Subhanahu wa ta'ala did not authorize these governance. He did not. And look what has happened. When we look at the financial, he did not authorize it. Even under Jewish law, the stuff that's going on is not authorized. Even under our Jewish brothers know that. Those who follow the halakha, which is the Sharia of Judaism, doesn't authorize this. That's why I say this situation, brothers and sisters, is very deadly, very, very deadly. I believe Nigeria is safe. That any group to take over. I think Nigeria, when you look at the corridors of the Sahel and the Sahel going to the east, the most secure of the governments will be Nigeria, because Nigeria is in a position and the security apparatuses where it can thwart a takeover. But northern Nigeria is a hotbed, and it has been. We all know what's going on in northern Nigeria. You have Boko Haram, which is a miscreant, misguided group. Not Mujahideen. Big difference, brothers and sisters. Big difference. Yes, I'm not here to make takfir, meaning expediation against them. But they are a miscreant group and so forth and so on. Kidnapping, that's not authorized in Islam. But then you got Fulani herdsmen groups and militias. And then you have bandits. All of this is in the northern tier. And there's calls for the north to break off and have their own Islamic state, to break off from Nigeria. See, the Fulani are now, in many of the groups, are now calling even now for a jihad. So Nigeria is safe right now, yes. But they're in a tenuous situation because they have powder kegs, because the government has basically, washed their hands of the north. Do you know up in the north, there's still people living in huts? Can you believe that? And don't have, they have to go to the stream to get their water with all this oil money. You see what I'm talking about? Why these groups are going after the government? Because we have so much wealth. Where is that money going? We got people in the northern Nigeria who still live in huts. How about Niger? Niger it still is the poorest nation on earth with all these resources that they give away to the West. But now it's been changed because they took over and it's starting to change that. But I'm just giving you these things to get your mind to see, why are these Muslims fighting? Why did the Mujahideen group fight in Syria? Because Assad was a maniac. He was killing. He did not have the Sharia. Plus, the Shia have been killing the Sunnah for a long time. Now they had the chance to take them out. In the Sahel, why the Mujahideen groups like the Messina and others? Messina is the Fulani, Fulani brothers herdsmen who took to the sword and to the AK-47 and formed the Messina. If you heard my classes, if you see my videos, I talked to Messina. Messina was a very powerful Fulani jihad state coming from the 1300s to the 1800s, on and off. Very, very powerful. So this group took the name Messina after dedication of the Fulani Mujahideen group that was running a lot of West Africa at one time, from the 13th century to about the 18th century. That's why they call them the Messina. But anyway, this is something, brothers and sisters, that they had to be very careful about. In the corridor, Russia's Wagner Group. Now, here is what I was talking about, brothers and sisters. President Putin has vowed to assist the corridor. He's been making his rounds. His dignitaries made his rounds in the corridor region. And the Wagner Group, you heard my class here last year. I was talking about the Wagner Group were involved in a lot of mass slayings of Fulani. and also accused of raping our Fulani sisters, mothers, aunties, and grandmothers. If they didn't do it, they aided, abetted, and stayed and watched while the BS security forces ravished our Fulani sisters. But what has happened in the last 6 months, brothers and sisters, has been retribution. These groups have now been killing the Wagner group, I mean, faster than you can turn on and off a light. The Wagner group are being slaughtered. 50 here, 100 here, 20 here, 10 over here been ambushed. They're getting their butts kicked. Even last year, if you looked at, I don't know if many understand the Russian language. Russia has one station in particular, and Russia is a state-backed, but it gives pretty good news, okay, especially about Africa. And it talks about the Wagner, and the Wagner commanders have talked about the Sahel. They admitted, I remember last year when I saw their first broadcast, they admitted that they thought they could walk in to Sahel because they didn't admit this, but I read what they were saying is that these are black folk. They're desert dwellers, okay? So, hey, man, they didn't get trained in military schools like me, so I'll bring my people in here and we'll be able to take them out. They found out that's not the case. They found that when they came to the Sahel, and they came to the Savannah regions and to the Sahara, the desert, that's in Arabic, desert in English, they begin to get spanked. And on that broadcast, one of the commanders was talking about when they were going on patrols, they were looking left and right. They didn't see anybody. Suddenly, out of nowhere, these guys came and ambushed them. This is I'm giving you this situation. I talked about this in other segments I had, 6 months ago, 7 months ago, about what's going on with Wagner. But here in the last 6 months, though, there's been a lot of their soldiers and mercenaries killed, to the point where now Wagner is taking in mercenaries from all over the place because they're losing manpower, and they're trying to get Africans basically now to train Africans to fight other Africans. Have we seen that before? We know that trick. Burkina Faso has scored some major victories, but not the war on the Mujahideen, rogue miscreant groups and misguided militias. Burkina Faso, the brilliant young Muslim head of state. The West has been trying to assassinate him almost every other week. You hear about reports in Burkina Faso where they're trying to assassinate our brother president there, Burkina Faso, because he threw out the French and he threw out the Americans. He has scored because the Russians I heard it was UAE and Jazeera Arab gave him drones. So these drones he used to attack and killed some Mujahideen leaders. But they have many different groups there, but they have not won the war. They've only settled some parts. And the Mujahideen groups still control a vast portion of Burkina Faso. It's a very dangerous situation, brothers and sisters, if you get me where I'm talking about. You as Africans, and anybody in particular, you should have well-rounded education, because the world is a dangerous powder keg as we sit here now. You should understand what's going on in Jazeera Arab. You should understand what's going on in the African continent, because things like this is big news, but it affects you and disaffects you according to where you're at. And you should be made aware for your education so you can understand what's going on. And when your governments turn back around and say, hey, we got vital interests. What is your vital interest in Syria? I heard on CNN, I heard dignitaries talking about how they got vital interests. What? Yes, they have some mineral things there, but what is the national security issue? Because there's no Mujahideen groups declaring war on America, sending anybody to America to kill Americans. When the Americans come there, yes, they kill them, because rightfully so, because you invaded their land. That's their homeland. They have a right to defend themselves. Just like I cannot say anything if the Mujahideen, not Mujahideen, the rogue groups like IS and AQ, if they come to invade the United States, the American government has a right, and American people, whether in Los Angeles, New York, or Dallas, Texas, you have the right to defend your homeland and your way of life. You have that right. But the Africans and the Arabs and our brothers on the subcontinent have the same human right to defend themselves when the Americans come over, or the Russians or the British come over to take them out. They have a right to defend themselves. That's just human nature. It's not terrorism. When you come to my home and take me out, I have a right to defend myself and my families. That's what they're doing. That's not terrorism. See, it's not terrorism. Nor is it terrorism if my group came in to invade America and the Americans did everything they possibly can to drive me out using conventional, unconventional methods to kill. That's it's authorized because why? I invaded your homeland. See? So we have to understand that. We have to be fair here. If we invaded America, you have a right to defend your way in any way. Clubs, knives, stealth, whatever the situation may be. When you come to Africa or you come to Jazeera Arab or to subcontinent and you attack, those brothers there have the right to defend themselves. See? That's the only right. Let's see here we got here. Turkey sent. Oh, okay, it's Turkey. Thank you very much, my dear sister, for reminding me. Thank you very much. It was Turkey. Yeah, I thought it was UAE, but thank you very much for the information. You're correct. It was Turkey that sent them the drones. Thank you very much, dear sister, and you're welcome. Salam. Thank you for showing up today, my dear sister. Thank you. Okay. The African Mujahideen fighters from the Sahel have been aiding the insurgent groups in Iraq and Syria for years. I don't know if you guys know much about that. I talked about this issue about a year ago. You have African Mujahideen soldiers who have been prevalent in Afghanistan to Jazeera Arab for over a decade. I talked about one unit that was prevalent with the Taliban when Taliban was fighting to liberate itself from the Americans and all the other, the Western powers. They were there. They had this one black unit. I told about the story about what happened there, where they used the fighters from where? They came from the Sahel. The Sahel. I say it again, they came from the Sahel. And these brothers were ruthless. When the Afghanistan Mujahideen group needed ruthlessness to take out a warlord inside a province where it had close quarters, fighting, where I'm talking about maybe it's going to be hand to hand because they ride in motorbikes or they come in on foot, they go in hand to hand combat. They called in this one, and I forgot the name that they called this black unit. I forgot the name. They had a name for it in Pashtun. I can't think of the name because it's Pashtun, because I can't speak Pashtun. I know some words, but I can't speak the language. But anyway, these ruthless groups, they sent these brothers from the Sahel to mop up the cities. That's right, brothers and sisters. That's right. That's why I said everything is linked. Everything is linked. I'll get to you, you guys in a minute. Please hold on for the comments. I'll get you. I just want to make one more point here. Okay. Now, the North African Mujahideen have been fighting in Afghanistan to Jazeera Arab as well, especially in Palestine. The Moroccans have always been in, especially Palestine, because Palestine is like a brother-sister relationship, Morocco and Palestine. Okay, I'm talking for a long, long time, brothers and sisters, stretching way back to the point that they are honored with their own area. They're honoring the Moroccan soldiers and Mujahideen who fought. That's right. You should understand that kind of history. Okay, what we got here? Syria's not, that's the Assad regime. Syria, no, let me tell you, That's his regime. Who is going to stop the Mujahideen? Who's going to stop the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham now? Who's going to stop them? The Shia? The Shia is broken up. The Shia was backed by the Russians. Who is, yes, it's almost fallen because who's running now Syria now? Assad's gone to Iran. Who is going to take out the Mujahideen groups now? Who's going to take them out? They just defeated the soldiers. Who is going to take out the Mujahideen groups now? Who's about ready to take over the country? Who? Assad is gone. He left. He's in Syria. He left to go Syria. And who's going to take them out? Who's going to take these Mujahideen groups out? See, think about that. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum, my dear brother. Thank you much for your comment. Thank you very much. Now, many of you may not understand this, or perhaps you might have heard about it, forgot about this. African American Mujahideen soldiers were present in the AQ Al-Qaeda at one time when they were in their heyday. That's right. African Americans did show up with them in Afghanistan prior to their dismantling and so forth, before AQ was dismantled. I'll give you an example of what happened on this. How we found out about this, it was a Pakistani writer who had an interview at that time with bin Laden. And bin Laden had conditions and told this writer they had to go pick him up. They blindfolded him because they did not want the writer to know exactly where he was at, and because he could give away their position and so forth and so on. So they blindfolded him and they took him. He didn't know where he was at and so forth and so on. They removed the thing from his eyes. He began to walk in the camp. He saw black folk, black men. Heard him speaking, because the Pakistanis speak English, heard them speaking English. So he asked bin Laden and his second man, I can't think, at that time he was a kind of a very dark-skinned Arab, also with an imam, I can't think of his name now, who was second in charge at that time. He's almost my complexion, Arab, long white beard like mine, but he was with bin Laden all the time. It's like an enforcer. They came, he said, who is these black men here to speak English? He said, never mind. I'll never forget that article that this Pakistani writer who was there to investigate and interview bin Laden. The African Americans were there. The African Americans were also present in Syria and Iraq. As a matter of fact, there's a place in DC where they were funneling African Americans from DC, Virginia region into Canada and into, I think, Turkey at the time, before Turkey clamped down, and then they were escorted into the Levant region, and some died. And they came in the news. Some of them were killed in airstrikes, and some were captured. And when they began to execute IS and so forth and so on, when they began to take them out, some of the African Americans died in that. So I just want to give you that backdrop for your education, to understand that this thing is not a white Arab situation at all. Okay, that's not the case here, because you have all kind of people involved. You got Africans now still there in the region supporting the Mujahideen groups. We have that. They're there. I wanted you to understand that. Where we got, let me see here. Okay, we got here Mohammed Jalani is who backed by the U.S. Now, see, that's a rumor. Again, I heard this, and again, we just don't know until the smoke's clear. Because he said he's going to run the Sharia law. The Americans will never back anybody who claim they're going to run the Sharia. They will go after them, because the Americans are trying to destroy, to make sure that no Muslim government runs the Sharia according to the way the Prophet Nabi Muhammad ﷺ ran it, according to his commands, and the command of Allah according to the Quran. I saw him in this interview. He said this. Now we have to wait and see what he's going to do. See, we're going to have to wait and see. Syria is the next Libya. I think so too, brother. I believe you could be right. They may have a difficult situation, but they will take over the country. But even if they take over, the Shia Rafida, they're prevalent in Iraq, will come into Syria, and they'll have a bloody, bloody civil war, and a lot of people will die. Again, unfortunately, you're right. I believe that's going to be the next situation, and it'll be to the point. But I also kind of contend that they may have some form of governance for a while until they try to take them out. Only man mighty can help this. Yes, we know the thanks for showing up, all my dear brothers and sisters. Thank you very much for showing up today. Your support is greatly, immensely appreciated. The Imam Mahdi, we know he's coming. We know the signs. If you're Muslim, I know the Christians and Jews, you don't believe in this. So I understand that. The Muslims, we believe there will be a great Muslim will come. We know this is the case because our Prophet ﷺ gave us the indications of this. He gave the indices to talk about before his arrival. We see this. The Prophet ﷺ said one of the conditions is that the Arabs in the desert will build the world's tallest buildings. And you heard me say this many times. Can you imagine here in the 600s, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ were telling them who were, desert Arabs who became Muslims, okay, Mecca and Medina, okay, he's telling them that the Bedouins that they see, that they fight and laugh about, who build the tallest buildings. I wish I could be there to see their faces. But he told that they will build these buildings. This is one of the conditions. This happened. He said another condition will be the mass killings that would occur, what he called el-harj. That's what he called in Arabic language, meaning that it'd be ruthless killings. You heard me talk about this in a class, where the ruthless killing, for those who don't understand the Arabic, the al-harj, meaning that you have a man here, okay, like the African Americans in the United States. He gets out of his car. He sees the two-bar policeman come with his gun. He asks the question, why are you killing me? He doesn't know. The man who's killing him doesn't really understand why he's killing him. This is what this al-harj means ruthless killing, where no one knows why he's about ready to die, and the one doing the killing doesn't understand why he's killing. This is what he's talking about. We see that now, and it's starting to get worse. So his situation is coming. That's what Sufyan says. Uncle is not a real Muslim. I don't know. And again, I'm not here because I don't know much about them. I'm not going to make takfir, because when we say he's not Muslim, then now we get into the areas of dealing with fiqh, issues of the Iman Niya Islamiyah, and that's not the class for that. And I don't know much about this brother, what is going on with him. So I cannot make takfir, and I wouldn't make takfir on him, because all I know is we're sitting here and we have strict rules about that, because we have no way of knowing what he's doing there. Is he praying? Okay. We don't know this because we have no reports of that. So we cannot make takfir on him. Takfir means expediation. I won't do that. And that's not the class we're here for that today. How you doing, my dear brother? Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. How you doing? Thank you for showing up today, my dear brother. And we got another what's happening in Syria. It's not going to age well, Uncle. It's going to get worse, and the Erdogan guy is a real Zion. You know what? I tell you something. I am tremendously upset with President Erdogan. I don't understand what happened to him. He talked good about what happened in Gaza, but then he was silenced. But under the table, I don't know if many of you know that, he's been giving Muslims back to the disbelievers. Brothers and sisters, do you know those who are Muslims? I know those who are not Muslims, I have to tell you something. We have strict rules that no Muslim turns another Muslim over to a disbeliever for him to kill him or jail him or to take his Islam from him. This is a case of what we call in Arabic ridda and deen, meaning the expediation from the religion. And we have also some other things where we have the nawaqid al-Islam in Arabic, ashra, meaning the 10 expeditions that throw you out. Our brother president there in Turkey has been very disappointing. Even with my Moroccan brothers, there's things going on there in Turkey I don't understand. When he talked one day, I saw his interview where he talked here almost 2 years ago about sending troops to Gaza. I was sitting here saying, yeah, man, now we finally got a Muslim leader who's about ready to help our brothers there in Palestine. It was only talk. See, so I'm disappointed in him and so forth and so on. Very disappointed. Okay, let me get back to this. We're ready to close here soon here. Okay, where are we at here? We talked about the African Americans. Yeah, the African Americans, president. There was one brother, he was from Maryland. He was all over the news. He was a light-skinned brother, and he got killed. He made his way into Syria and got killed. And hold for a second. Hold for a second, brothers and sisters. Let me hold just for 1 second. Okay, I'm sorry. I just had to speak to my wife here for something. Tell her something. I lost my train of thought. Here we talked with African Americans. Yeah, this light-skinned African American brother, I think he was from Maryland. I can't remember. He died in a strike there in Syria when the IS was being taken out. Okay, he died there, and I remember that case very well. The latest developments of the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham taken serious should be reminder and a wake-up call to fledgling Sahel governments. Your support could stop at any time from the West. That's right, brothers and sisters. This is the point I'm trying to make. The West comes in with security agreements and other agreements, and they tell you, Africans, that you're supposed to abide by this binding agreement. But the Americans, the British, and other Europeans, we know them in the Fulani language as Tubab, okay, break those agreements when they want. When they want to break these agreements, this is what they do. And they break away from you and they leave you standing. Let's look at Egypt here under what's his name, Mubarak, when he was overthrown. He was backed by the United States, militarily, financially, and they have security agreements. They withdrew their hands. Remember, he was taken out. That's why the African governments should watch that, and they should learn to break free from them. You have the money, you end this corruption, you take our resources that we have on this continent, you sell them at market value, stop giving our resources free, and break away like Mali has done, like Burkina Faso has done. Burkina Faso is almost debt-free now as well. The African governments should look at that, stop these agreements, especially the security, and start working with your brothers who have been at war with you because why? You were getting paid under the war of terror, and then you came after them, and they come to fight you back. Now, the stumbling block is these brothers, you heard me say this a million times, no black African, I don't care if he's Arab, if he's Tuareg, or he's Fulani, or he's Hausa, okay, or Wolof or Jollof or any of the other ethnic groups. When he comes to the table to talk to his brother, he doesn't want to see a Tubab sitting at the table behind him. They don't want to see that. See? So this is something, again, that we have to look at, brothers and sisters, and I have to speak honestly about that. This is a stumbling block. Burkina Faso understands that. Mali understands that. That's why they threw them out and said, look, I want to run my own show here. I don't need your money anymore. I have all the resources necessary to run my country. I don't need you to stand at the table. So they're trying to negotiate with Mujahideen. That's where it should be. Burkina Faso is not really doing that. And that's why I urge our brother president to bring the ulama into the fray, let them begin to mediate between the government and the Mujahideen groups. They should do that because the ulama is well equipped, because you heard me say this 1,000 times. When you got staunch, hardened Muslims, what softens their heart is not a two-bob walking, a pencil neck two-bob with a suit come walking in there talking crazy. That's don't soften their heart. What softens their heart is when you start talking about the Quran and the Sunnah. That's what softens their heart. That's what softens their heart, when the ulama come in there and start talking about the Sharia Allah, the Sunnah Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam. That's what softens their heart. Not somebody from the West threatening them. That doesn't soften their heart. So this is what I'm talking about here, that this wake-up call should be for them to get themselves together, because you relying 100% on the West. If they withdraw themselves, brothers and sisters, you're going to be in trouble. You're going to be in trouble. You're going to be in serious, serious trouble. Look what's happening in Syria. Now, most of us are safe, and here, and because why? We don't have the glaring problems. But the Sahel is a powder keg, and there's 25 states who are in trouble. And we already have the Central African Republic, where the Wagner Group is basically running the Central African Republic, and they have Mujahideen groups there fighting to the death to remove them. They got a puppet black government, but you got the Wagner Group is actually running things. See, so we have a lot of things going on in this continent. That's why this development here in Syria is important for us to realize that and dissect it and look at that. And we hope our governments look at this and start to say, hey, we got to break free, because we don't want a situation to happen to us the same way. See, irrespective of how much money or natural resources you have given them to secure their roguish services, meaning here the West. Brothers and sisters, we're in a situation here where the West are here to take our resources. If they could throw every African out or kill us and throw us in jail, they would, so they can take the natural resources. They're not going to leave without a fight and without killing, because they have been enriched for hundreds of years by our wealth on this continent. Human resources from 1600 to the late 1800s, they took human resources out here in slavery and made many families in America and in Europe very rich. The European governments became rich by stealing our gold and our artifacts and selling them on open market and so forth. And then the natural minerals, gold, bauxite, you name it, all these resources, they begin. That's how Europe has been enriched and still enriched. They're going to fight and kill to keep that going. We start to have African governments say no to this. We're not giving you this free anymore. You're going to have to pay for it. France said no, and they tried to overthrow our brother here in Burkina Faso, almost weekly, just about. It's to the point where every time you turn around, there's another attempt to kill him, so forth and so on. The West is not going to go by easy. They're going to want those resources free as they've been taking them, because this is a lifeline for them. This is why they don't want to see in Africa free. This is why also they want to stop the migration of African Americans in particular, because African Americans have money. They come over to Africa, plus they have education, and they have a lot of means behind them too. That's why they make it difficult for us here. They don't want to give us citizenship because our governments are under their thumb. And they say, look, these black people that come from America, yeah, you let them come to visit. They come to stay. They can stay here for a while, but then you got to figure out ways to get them out. But you don't give them ways where they can stay there and get citizenship. We have this problem now. We have African Americans screaming. There's many articles where African Americans have been there 15, 16 years, and they see a white man or a Chinese man or an Indian man walk right past them and go in and get his citizenship, where he's standing there 15, 20 years in the country and can't get it. This is what I'm talking about. See, this is wrong, but this is what I'm talking about, and what they're doing is wrong in this type of respect. That's why I call it roguish services, because the Americans said, yeah, okay, we'll do this. The British said we'll do this. The Western government said we'll do that, and then it's caused a lot of problems. Look at our economies. Our economies are in shambles because we're following the West when we should be following the Sharia law. Because we're hurting. Democratic ways and means have done nothing for us, brothers and sisters. And while I'm speaking of this, those here who will probably see this in the future, whatever, my YouTube station, that's why I couldn't talk for a long time. I was fighting dummy sites. They kept putting dummy sites so that way they could curtail my programs. Then they went to another thing to stop me. Now they went where you can unsubscribe, but if you try to subscribe to my station, they won't allow you to subscribe to my station. I've complained. They said YouTube said they were not behind this. Well, it's your station. Who's behind it then? Who's got access? Who's there working with my enemies to do this? See, so I'm hoping that they get this straight, and you guys can subscribe if you like these kind of talks, because this is an important development today, brothers and sisters, for all people. I don't care if you're sitting in America. I don't care if you're white, black, whatever the situation may be. But in particular, we're talking to Africans, and in the Sahel region in particular, this is in development because we have Mujahideen soldiers roaming around through the Sahel, and they're watching. Our governments in the Sahel are being supported by the West. They're seeing another government who was supported by West had their hands they removed from him, and also Russia, and then they left him naked to fight off the Mujahideen groups. This can happen in Burkina Faso. It can happen in Mali. It can happen in Niger. Only when I say that it's basically safe, really safe, is Nigeria. But Nigeria's got a myriad of problems in the north. I mean, security problems are just off the charts, and they have no answers for what's going on in northern Nigeria. This is why the Nigerians, the northern Nigerians, the Muslims, which is the Muslim north, want to separate because they're tired of the government down in the south. As you heard me say, you have many portions of North Africa, North Nigeria, where people still living in huts. How can it be, brothers and sisters? How can that be? They're still living like they're in the 1700s in huts. They don't have running water coming in. Okay, nothing like that. So how can it be? The North is tired. That's the Fulani and the Hausa in particular. They're tired of the government and its lack of respect, and how they just threw them under the bus. And now many of them are calling for the separation, where you have Nigeria dissected. And I hope that don't happen. Be honest with you, I don't want to see that. But if it happens, as this, Supernahuatl wills that. So, brother says, if there's any other questions here, I do, I'll entertain that. And then if not, then I'll get ready to close. I just want to thank all the brothers here and sisters who showed up today. And I really appreciate that. And I'm hoping that, that you'll show up again in some other programs. I got another program I'm going to do, but I'm going to wait and see in a couple of days or so. I'm going to see if they do rectify my problem there in YouTube and so forth like that. Because now, even if you pull up my YouTube station, if I'm not mistaken, it still shows there's no subscribe button. I had a brother sent me a screenshot showing that. I bitterly complained to them because I also heard that I have people who subscribe, 200 or more subscribe to me, had their subscriptions removed. And I tested that because I have family here in Maghreb here, right? And stuff like this. My family's adopted family and family. And those who had not subscribed to me did subscribe. What happened? Within an hour or so, their subscription was pulled. And we were sitting there watching and waiting. An hour later, they were pulled. I barely complained to YouTube for this. So I'm hoping that this gets rectified, brothers and sisters. But I appreciate everybody who showed up today. is greatly appreciated. If you have any questions, please feel free to give me what you want, and I'll answer them. If not, I'm going to close here pretty soon, and I'm just going by those who came by and visited here today in the chat. I appreciate each one of you, and I'm hoping that each one of you stay safe wherever you may be, especially if you're in the West, because of what's happening with the election. In America, I mean, I never seen anything like it. I mean, if Obama was convicted of a crime and indicted in other cities, do you guys think that he would have been able to be reelected? No. They didn't even want him reelected because they claimed that he did something in college, meaning he drank or he did something or something like this, which is not a crime, okay? But they was talking about something like this. Here you got a man convicted of a crime and indicted in another place and so forth. He's got to pay. He's still got to wait for a sentence, and they put him as president. What's going on with America? I don't understand that. Thank you, my dear brother. Walaikum salam. Thank you for showing up today. I'm just going by just giving my respect to those who showed up today. And the situation in United States is very tenuous now. Trump weighed in on the problem in Syria. His response is he said, let it go. In some ways, I don't like the man, but when someone does something, even though you don't like him, but he kind of told the right thing. But I don't know what the shadow government underneath him, they're not talking that, because I saw already some dignitaries claim that the Syrian situation is a national security issue for America, because any Mujahideen group, even though they're not killing them, they don't advocate sending people over to kill them, they consider them a threat, because the mission of the United States is to make sure there's no governments run under the Sharia law. They don't. That's why they send their agents to all the Muslim countries to fight this, to fight those who go to the masjid and fight to keep Islam down and to change it and to bring it where it's so weak that they can control the Muslim states, because they don't fear the person who's Juju. They don't fear those who's the African traditional religions like Juju and Ifa and Voodoo and Obia and so forth and so on. There's many others. They don't fear them. They fear the Muslims, the rightful Muslims, to take over. This is a fact, brothers and sisters. It's unfortunate, but this is a fact. That they are worried about. So, in a nutshell, brothers and sisters, our dear brother here, we have one of our guests, one of our brothers, said that he was under the tutelage of the Americans. I don't know much about him. I remember the group at the time when it began to broke off from IS and AQ and so forth. I heard of them, but I did not know what their substance was, because they didn't have much information on them. So I don't know much about this brother. I'm not going to sit here and call him a disbeliever as wrong. If he's backed by the Americans, I do not know either. I cannot give you any, confirmation on that. We'll wait and see what's going to happen, because they're in a position to now take over. He said Assad is dead. So, I mean, not he's dead literally, but his government is dead. And this is what he said in this interview here. And so this is going to be a very fluid situation, and we just have to wait and see what's going to happen. We had another guest who said that perhaps that we'll have he said that the Syria the Syria is the next Libya, and this could be the situation at hand as right. This is a possibility that this can happen. And our brother here said that he had got word, I guess, here that the leader of this Mujahideen group was backed by the United States. I asked a question at the beginning of my talk. I said, who was backing these people? Because they were a small group at one time, and they skyrocketed with Mujahideen. They called for jihad, and Mujahideen groups came from everywhere. Someone funded them. Who gave them all the modern weaponry? See, they didn't give airplanes, but they gave them all the ground stuff, the military madness on the ground, all types of mortars and all kind of other technical things to help him take over the government. I don't know who supported him. Our brother said he got word, I guess, here that the Americans were backing him. I have no way of knowing because that part of it, I do not know, what's happening with that. Our brother here also said that Syria has not fallen. Well, again, as I explained, our brother here said this, it's about ready to fall. And the Mujahideen group is in position because they ran Assad out. He's gone. His military basically has been defeated. He's already formulating because the lady from CNN asked him questions about this situation, and he said, how are we going to run the government? He said, we're going to issue the Sharia law. So what does that mean? That means he's in position now to take over because they've already taken the city. So it's only a matter of time and whatnot and so on for this to happen. And this situation is very fluid. And again, for us sitting in Africa, this is something that our leaders should look at. That will tell you how tenuous the situation is. Because why? Our leaders are sitting here backed by the West, backed by some or backed by Russia, and a combination of Russia and the Americans and the British and so forth and so on. What happens when they remove your hand? They move their hand from us. See, then we have groups who come to take over and these fledgling states, and this can happen. This would look at Assad was running high and mighty. The Russians were protecting. Under the table, the Americans were protecting. The British under the table, they were talking one thing, but under the table, they were supporting them with intelligence information. They had agents. They had, probably advisors and so forth and so on, also supporting this man. And then they withdrew all their support, and what happened to him? He was now defeated. Okay, he was now defeated. He said here that the regime is effectively dead. It's gone. The head has been cut off. The head is gone and moved to Syria, and he's left all these others to fend for themselves. See, that's why I said it's very tenuous for our African brothers and sisters to see this and ask questions about this and urge our leaders to rethink their situations with the West, because the West can break agreements. They tell you don't break this signed agreement, but yet they break it anytime they want. And what can you do about it? They decide they want to break the agreement with you. We know as mithaq in the Arabic language, okay, or teswiya in Arabic language, we know that as that if they have this teswiya or this mithaq with the West and stuff, we know that they're not binding by it, even though they have their dignitaries sign it. Anytime they want to break from it, they can. Look what happened in Syria. They have running agreements. And what happened to his support? They walked away from him, and this brother here went and took over. It's a very, 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 very tenuous situation, brothers and sisters. Very, very tenuous. And it's dangerous. But it also goes to show you how slimy it is to have agreements with those that you should not have agreements with. That's why I urge our African governments. Now, let me preface it. I got to go here pretty soon. What I mean by this, brothers and sisters, is this. When we're talking about the West, we're talking about the governments. We're not talking about the people, okay? Because under Islam, we have no right to touch and harm, and I gave classes on harm ordinary disbelievers or Westerners, okay, from Europe or America or whatever, Canada. We have no right to do that. That's against the Sharia. That's why you heard me talk hard against the AQ and the IS, because they look at it differently. They feel they have the right to kill that tourist or whatever who comes from Los Angeles, California into the Muslim areas or whatever, and they have the right to kidnap and kill them. No, that's not Islamic. That's wrong, because they're not combatants. Okay, they're innocent persons, and we have strict rules under the Sharia. We don't hit them. Now, there's a different situation in a time of war where war is declared and you're trying to invade. There's other methods that we use. But as far as this killing innocent people, we cannot do that. See? And so this is why, again, brothers and sisters, we should understand this and understand Islam as well. Those you see, these errant groups these extremist groups and so forth, when they kill, you say, well, this is Islamic law. It is not Islamic law. Let's get that straight. It's not Islamic law, brothers and sisters. It is not. It's against the Prophet's orders. He even said, you don't bomb a church. How many we see in Afghanistan, in Syria, how many churches, how many mosques are blown up? Our Prophet ﷺ is against that. He said, do not even take them out. He said, don't even take down trees. They do that today. They destroy forests and everything. Our Prophet said, ﷺ said, don't take out even trees. And don't kill the clergy. I don't care if they're Jews or they're Christians or Muslims or they're Buddhist or whatever, or Hindu. We have no right to kill the clergy. Now, again, if the clergy comes out with a gun and he starts to try to take you out, you have the right to take him out. Okay, there's no doubt about that. But when he's a man of peace and he's running his church or synagogue or temple, what situation may be, we have no right to kill him outright. Our Prophet give us commands, don't do it. So we have strict laws, brothers and sisters, in this regard. And if those who are not Muslims don't understand this, that's why I'm telling you now, because you say, oh no, you guys can kill us anytime. No. And I know you're going to go to Surah 9. I've talked about that. Surah Toba, when he's talking about you find them at the disbelievers and kill them when you see them, when you find them. That's in a time of war, when you have a declaration of war. And that was a time of history when the Muslims were fighting against the disbelievers, against other Arab tribes who was trying to stop Islam. This is when the order came, because they had suffered greatly under these Arab tribes, especially the Meccans in particular, and so forth. And that's why the command from Allah was, now you fight them, and when you find the disbelievers, you kill them. This was at that time because of the war, not meaning that I can go to Los Angeles and say, oh, hey, man, there's a guy here. He's not a Muslim. Boom, I go shoot him. No, we cannot do that. They're talking about time of war and situations and whatnot and combatants. Again, I want to refresh this again, meaning I want to say it again. We have, there's 5 conditions. I gave a class on this. We have 4 of the disbelievers. We cannot touch them. We can make dawah, we can have relationships with them, but the 5th, we cannot. The 5th, or what we call harbi, el-harbi, meaning they're warriors who fight Muslims. That's where you take off the gloves to deal with them. But the others, tourists, teachers, clergy from the Jews or the Christians or the Hindus or from the Shinto or whomever, Juju or whatever, we cannot take them out just because they don't believe in Islam. It's strictly forbidden. I'm telling you that straight out. Yes, we have people who do it, but I'm telling you now, that's not according to Islamic rules and law. It's not. We cannot do that. We have strict rules. The tourists, we cannot do that. Even emissary, we cannot touch them. But the al-Harbi who fight Muslims and kill Muslims, like the Western governments do, that's a different situation. We're not even supposed to have even, as you heard me say, taswiyah or the mithaq in Arabic language with these groups. We cannot. But this is modern times, and our governments do have that. That's another subject all in itself. But I'm giving you what it is under the Sharia law, meaning we're not supposed to have that. But even the tourists come here, they're welcome, as long as they abide by the laws. Just like when the Muslim goes over to Washington, D.C. or New York, he must abide by the laws, right? We have the same thing here. A woman comes into the Muslim states, she's a tourist, there's no problem. You and your husband, your family come here, you want to see the sights, because generally speaking, like especially here in Al-Maghrib, the people here are very kind. They don't have the prohibitions that you see in the West. Here in Morocco, the people are very kind. And they don't care about your color or what. They're very kind. So when you come here, you'll see people that'll share food with you. You ask a common Moroccan person where I'm living here in Al-Maghrib, hey, I need to find this place. They will stop what they're doing to help you. That's how that is, because they understand we're not against everybody. We're only against those who fight us. So when the tourists come over to do this. Now, let me say this too. We have some tourists that say, look, I'm going to come to a Muslim country. I don't care. I'm going to come and walk around in a bra and panties, and that's it. Now you're going to have problems. We've had some, I've had classes talking about this. We had some American girls did things like this and they were thrown out. And I remember two African American girls in Casablanca were talking real loud and crazy. Here, they don't do things like this. In mostly Africa, period, even West Africa, when you go to a place to, we call it the souk in the Arabic language, to go buy things. I tried to, the other day, my English just leave. What's the word for the, I can't, but anyway, it's a big souk where you have, a lot of different things, clothes, food and all that. Well, they came start screaming and crying and switching their their backsides and they had low blood, they were acting crazy and they got straightened up quickly and were told to leave. That was about 2.5 years ago. So that type of situation happens. Yeah, that's a different situation. And they got ran out because they violated the sanctity and the quietness of the country with this type of vulgarity. And I remember in Ghana, you guys remember this? There was a picture 3 years ago of some African American sisters who were on the slave castle. Can you believe this? The slave castle bring you to tears because our ancestors were brought to these slave castles. You can feel when you go, you feel their tears. Okay, you feel the vibe is still there. These sisters came and got on top of the castle and they did a booty dance. I don't know if you guys saw that 3 years ago. They had a video. It went viral. See, this type of stuff like this, you got to throw them out because you violate the sanctity of that country, and especially a place like this. It's a slave castle where our ancestors were taken. That's a place where there's reflection. How many people go there and they cry and cry and cry? We've seen dignitaries go there. I've seen hardened Muslims and others who are very, very hard in life came and was humbled when it came to slave castles. They know their ancestors were taken in such castles like this, and they broke down in tears and they cried a lot. And when we had these sisters went on top of one of the castles and did a booty dance performance in video, and it spread it through the media. This is why they get in trouble, especially when they come into African lands, they do the type of stuff. You're not welcome for that, okay? Bottom line. Well, brothers and sisters, I think that's it for the day here. I will have a talk here, inshallah ta'ala bi'ithnillah, with another topic coming your way. And I'm going to go back to the history of Egypt. As we know in Metu Neher, that's the ancient Egyptian language. They called Egypt Kemt, the Black Lands. And I'll get back into this. I'm going to talk about this word Kemt, okay, in history, because it's a genetic, there's a linguistic thing to this. And I've been talking about the linguistics, African linguistics. I said that in order for you to understand the true history of Africa, you've got to have some linguistics behind you to understand fully the ins and outs, because the Africans, when they left Egypt in particular, they went all kind of which ways, and they became the Wolof, they became the Jolof, they became the Mandinka, the Mende, the Fulani, and so forth and so on. Okay, they became all these different groups and all kind of different languages. So you have to understand these type of things, not speak it fluent, that's not what I mean, but you have to understand these linguistic ties in order for you to understand even Egypt, ancient Egypt. You got to, which we call Kemp. You must understand that, because there's a king's list and you have kings. These kings have names. Those names are still transparent with us in West Africa and North Africa today. And African Americans, if you look back at history, you'll find some names that they still have ties to. We have the linguistic, we have the genotype, which is the M series. The M series is the ancient art. Black brothers carried the M series. They did analysis on mummies, the royal mummies, not the Europeans, the Greeks, and so forth, who came, and the Turks and so forth, who came into Egypt to rule. No, we talk about the real ancient Africans. And plus, we have the subscriptions. I'll talk about this stuff. I'm going to talk about the Black Lands. This is what they call it, the Black Lands. But it didn't mean that. And I'll give you something linguistics to help you on that. And I talked in my classes about ancient Egypt and whatnot, and gave you proof about why there were black folk. And I gave you some things on the hieroglyphics. I gave you some translations to that to explain how we got to this point, how I know they were black, because there was things in the Book of the Dead, they call it in English, okay, and in there it's talking about what our ancestors saw and where they came from. They said they came from the south. They said they came from the beginning of the Nile. That's a funny. Now, where did the Nile begin? It's not England, because the Europeans and we still have worldwide contention is that ancient Egypt, Kemp was white. But if you look at the hieroglyphics, our African brothers wrote about where their origins. They said they came from the beginning of the Nile. So where is the beginning of the Nile? It's we know Lake Victoria, Uganda, the Tanzania, right in the east southern part of Africa. That's the beginning of the Nile. The Nile doesn't begin in Europe or Greece or Ireland or England. It doesn't. See? So those are evidences that I gave, and I'm hoping, brothers and sisters, that you go back to review those tapes that I had and whatnot. And I'll entertain any questions as long as they're respectful. I'm an elder, so don't write to disrespect me or something like. If you disagree, write to me. We'll talk about it. But don't come with some profanity or some other craziness. I'm too old for that now. And and I wouldn't write to you in such a manner, so I would not entertain that, even though I get that from some who I believe they're not Africans at all. I believe that. Okay, brothers and sisters, that's enough for me today, and I will leave you with that. Please stay safe wherever you may be, especially in the United States. Please stay safe. And our brothers and sisters in the Sahel, I'm hoping that they can sleep tonight and rest well. And because your situation there is tenuous. Our brothers and sisters are sitting in Gaza who are dying needlessly. We should all have prayers to Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, asking for their liberation and to throw out the Israeli government out of this region so they can be some healing, because there's too many. What is it? I think over 50,000 now has died there. That's horrendous. That's a genocide. Everybody's talking about that. I'm not going to get into that. This program is not for that. But we should have our prayers open for all the injustice. I don't care who you are, you should pray for the justice so it prevails. Because if the people over here are quiet and they have justice, then you'll have your peace and security as well. But when the other people are up in arms, then you cannot have peace. And you got to remember that. So, okay, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum. Rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.